This is Battleground PA, a PennLive podcast discussing the issues that matter to Pennsylvanians and documenting the events in the Keystone State and beyond that could shape how you vote in the 2024 elections.
Hello, everyone. This is Joyce Davis, PennLive's Outreach and Opinion Editor, and this is Battleground PA. Yes, I'm coming to you once again, in which we're going to discuss some of the top issues, including, unfortunately, what appears to be the recent assassination attempt on President Donald Trump. We don't have our trusted advisors here, Jeffrey Lord or Rajette Harris, but we may have even better. We have some young people here who are thoroughly engaged in their communities as well as knowledgeable about local, national, and international affairs. They are interns with a special program that is being conducted by the World Affairs Council of Harrisburg and PennLive. It's a special summer program that engages high school and college students in better understanding the world as well as their own backyards. And before we get started, let our esteemed guests introduce themselves and tell you who they are. We're going to start with Mary. Mary, tell us who you are.
Hello, I'm Mary, and I'm going to be a senior at Temple University, and I'm majoring in global studies with a concentration in global security.
Very good. That's Mary Gabrielle, right?
Yes.
Very good. All right. And then we'll turn to Connor. Connor, where are you hailing from?
Hello, my name is Connor Joyce, and I come from Gettysburg College, where I study political science and national security. I also minor in history as well as peace and justice studies while I'm there.
Very good. Thank you, Connor. And Sam Pimentel, who I think many of us may already know because he's got his own podcast already. Hi, Sam.
Hello. As already stated, I am Samuel Pimentel. I will be entering my freshman semester at Dickinson College in the fall. I love this type of conversation. I love being involved in politics, so that's why my hopes are to study political science in college. Thank you for having me here today.
That's right. Sam was an intern last year, but he stayed with the World Affairs Council and has actually done some op-eds and things for PennLive and the Patriot News. So, guys, let's get into it. I don't need to tell you that we're living through horrendously historic times. I'll put it that way. Someone like me from my generation lived through the assassination of three dear people. I mean, we lived through some violent times, but I hope you're not living through those same times. But I'll just ask you now, what are your thoughts? How have you been impacted? Mary, let's start with you by what appears to be an attempt on the life of a former president, President Donald Trump.
Yeah, I was definitely shocked when I read it, but I honestly thought that I wasn't surprised that this happened was my very first thought, which is really sad that I wasn't surprised that something like this could happen in our country. There's just such political turmoil and divide between everyone. It's really surprising that this happened, but I definitely saw it coming. And it's so sad to hear that people were injured with the assassination attempt. Someone was killed, which is just horrible and shouldn't happen in a country anywhere. And that brings up the gun rights and gun violence that talk that this brings up. And it shows that this could happen to anyone. And you could just it brings the talk of gun violence and gun rights to the Republican side for people who are usually pro-guns and pro-Second Amendment. They see that this horrific act happened to someone that they look up to. So I think this will have a very important conversation about open carry laws and stuff like that. So I guess that's looking on the bright side of it. It's going to spark many conversations about the future of our laws in our country.
Well, that would be a good thing. I would think that. But Connor, let me bring you into this. How have you been impacted? I mean, what did you think when you heard that another president, there's been an attempt on his life?
Well, I think going back to the original opening is we are in a time that is reminiscent of a time when JFK was shot, and RFK and Martin Luther King Jr. And we're in that time frame in today's world where we're having to deal with that same fear of political violence, which is unacceptable in any form and should be called out wherever it is, nationwide. But I also think that we should first, as we discuss this topic, delve into what Justice Louis Brandeis once said. He said, the most important political office is that of private citizen. So I think we have to recognize the individuals that were injured and that perished during this assassination attempt. I think that's very critical because they were just carrying out their patriotic duty, which is to, vote, go out to rallies, things like that, support whatever candidate they choose. And then going to the aspect of gun rights in today, I think it's going back to what I said earlier about JFK and everyone else that died from back then. We live in a time that's also eerie, just like that, but even more so with gun violence. It's estimated that around 327 people die per day or have injuries per day of gun violence in the United States alone. That's crazy, right? Like that shouldn't be acceptable. And when people talk about open carrying and policies like that, I think we need to delve into how that probably shouldn't be a thing. That's like a bad idea because when you think about it, Secret Service, most well-trained bodyguards probably in all of human history, and they couldn't stop people dying at this rally. So I think that we have to have a serious conversation about policy and regulation regarding how we're going to deal with gun violence in this nation.
Connor, I think you raised, both you and Mary raised some very good points about how this might impact the gun conversation. But let me bring in Sam. Sam, what are your thoughts? How has all this impacted you?
I think anybody with a heart, eyes, ears, and a mind is sickened. Absolutely sickened. Political disagreement is meant for the betterment of a nation. That's why we created the nation. That's why America has the system of democracy. But when a father, firefighter, and valuable member of a community is killed, you have to sit back and you have to ask, why? Why is there so much hatred and vitriol that we're literally killing each other, killing Americans on Americans for political causes that are supposed to be for the betterment of a nation? Now, you tell me this. Is a nation bettered when families, as a lot of families go to Trump rallies, when families are brought together to see the former president in what is probably supposed to be the highlight of some of their weeks, months, years, and even lifetimes? How is horrifying them make it any better? How does that help this country? And why did we lose the humanity of public figures? Why don't we see Trump as a flawed but still human? Why don't we see him as a father? Why don't we see him as a husband? And why don't we see him as still an American? Why have we lost this? Why do we see people as just evils? It's sickening.
Well, you again, all of you have raised some very good points that I think are going to cause our whole nation to just step back. And maybe that's some of the good that might come from this. I don't know if you saw any of the Republican convention, the opening night, but I watched it pretty intently. And I will say this, there were some apparently still intemperate remarks. Apparently there are some remarks that were made that were anti-Semitic and all of that. But by and large, when I saw the former president step out, I thought I saw a different person. The person, his face, the countenance, and all to me. Now, maybe I'm reading stuff into this. It seemed softer. It seemed more. I could be wrong. What are your thoughts? Okay, Connor, what are you thinking? You were shaking your head. Maybe so.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly with you. I mean, I think that both conventions are in essence a 4-day infomercial, but setting that aside and looking into what they actually contain, as in following the assassination attempt public policy wise, Trump did seem like a different person. His demeanor, you could see it in his eyes. It looked like he was less out to get people in terms of just pure vigor and I want to rile the crowd up, and more looking to unify. And even his language about how grateful he was to be alive following it really shows that sometimes when bad things happen like that, it really changes people because it affects them personally. And I think that as voters, we go to the ballot box in November, we have to wrestle with the fact, if Trump continues the same path that he's on right now of being a little different and showing himself in a different way, do we vote based on what we've seen Trump do in the past, meaning January 6th, prejudice against others, like Project 2025 kind of looming things, or do we go with the person who is evolving as we all are, but evolving after an assassination attempt? I think that's really what we have to look at.
That's an interesting question to throw to the American people. Mary, what did you see a different President Trump?
Yeah, I think after what happened, I think he was humanized, and I feel like it honestly like knocked him down a peg, like himself, because he kept like saying all these things without any repercussions, just like spewing misinformation. But then he saw the consequences of what he was saying. I mean, we don't know the motives of the assassinator, if the alleged assassination. But I think it really, I guess, like humbled him, and definitely did call for unity in the party, and showed him maybe not everyone in the Republican Party is pro-Trump. And especially like with the Republican National Convention, of course, calling for unity. And I think moving forward, they saw how important that was. I saw that they're bringing Nikki Haley to talk today. And that's definitely a sign of unity, because she, of course, wasn't pro-Trump, but they're trying to bring a united Republican Party to show that to the Democrats, that they're more united than the Democrats. So I think this definitely called for unity in the Republican Party.
Well, that I would think that would be a positive thing. And I have to agree with you guys. It's, people were talking about this. It's anytime you face a traumatic experience in your life, and few of us, thank God, face near death, right? Face like a bullet whizzed by us and we could have died within an inch. Few of us, but I'm sure if we did face that, you don't leave that unaffected. You don't leave it the same person. It's like just a new person will emerge. But Sam, we might be wrong. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think the fact of the matter is that he was literally inches away. If he didn't turn his head at a certain point, it'd be a much, much darker day than it already was. I truly do hope, and I'm young, I hope to be optimistic. I do think we could see a different human. I think we could see Trump realize that this hatred and vitriol has gotten us nowhere. It's regressed us, in fact. I think many policies have gone backwards, and I think the country has been doing worse because of the hatred and vitriol. And I think if former President Trump were to take this into consideration, I mean, we've seen his Truth Social posts, his social media posts as a whole, being a different message than before. It's not the message of the radical left. It's not the message of law and order. It's not that message anymore. Consistently, he's been saying, unite America, unite America, unite America. Now, this could be temporary. That could very well be possible. Or he could be changed. He could say, you know what? We need a new direction in this country. We need a more optimistic direction. And I hope and pray that that is the direction he will take us if elected.
Yes, go ahead, Connor. Throw yourself into this.
Well, adding on to Sam's point, there's something it's a theory called the doom loop, when in essence political parties, they spiral. It's created by Lee Drutman, or at least acknowledged and theorized by Lee Drutman. And it talks about how polarization kind of spins us round and round until, in essence, if you think about it, we get flushed down a toilet, right? We just go down the drain. And that's how democracy dies, right? So like at this rate of polarization, that's potentially what happens. We just spin until we go down the drain. Well, I think one of the things that Sam really, really importantly noted there is, if this is a new Trump, if this is a new way of doing it, well, then this might be a ticket out of this toxic polarization loop that we're in. Like, this might be one of those avenues that we can potentially take to get out of it. Now, if you look at the vice presidential pick that was also just picked at the Republican National Convention, we have different ideologies when you compare Kamala Harris and Vance. So, I mean, Vance is around 96% more conservative than the 118th Congress was. And Harris, when she was in Congress, was around 99% more liberal. So, I mean, you have different ideologies that are different polarizing, but with Trump acting differently now, being different post, gunshots and everything, will this change the algorithm of the doom loop? And I think that's a really important question.
That's it. Will it change the algorithm of the doom loop? That is really worth pondering. But Mary, let's hear your thoughts. I mean, yes, we could face a new President Trump, right? We could. We're not saying because we don't know yet, right? But there apparently to me still is an element that liked that wanted that vitriol, I mean, let's just face it, that's what he represented. He represented aggression, the bullying, that. So what happens to those people? Will he lose? Do you think he'll lose a good part of his base if he suddenly becomes a new, nicer Trump?
That's a good question. I really never thought about that before this conversation. I think his followers are so like devoted to him as a person, that they'll back him no matter what. I mean, we've seen that with his indictment case. They backed him no matter what, like on the bad side, but like moving towards him being like this changing him, being less aggressive. I think they'll still back that because they always find what I've seen, they've always find a reason to love him and support him. And I think that's really interesting. It just shows the divide. And I think he saw that, and that's why he picked JD Vance for his vice president, because Mr. Vance was once a never Trumper, as he called himself. So and then he changed and converted to love Trump and be pro-Trump. So this really gets another demographic of voter that says, oh, I was not pro-Trump before, but now I converted, just like the vice president nominee.
For unity, right?
Yeah, for unity, exactly. So yeah, it just shows that people can come around and change, but also like really support what someone has done. Attracting, of course, like JD Vance attracts young voters because he's the first millennial on the presidential ticket. So yeah, it's definitely something to look at for Donald Trump changing his personality, but I don't think that will really change a voter's mind if they are thinking about voting for Trump. I don't think that will change their mind because they're just all for him, whatever he does.
So Sam, Mary thinks he could lead us into a enlightened era, and that people will follow. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think we have to remember one of the biggest reasons why he won the 2016 election. Sure, it was his seemingly brash and almost radical type rhetoric, but people saw something else in him too. I think this has been overshadowed a bit, is that he was the voice of the common man. He was the voice of the Washington outsider. He was bringing new light into politics. And while sometimes this could come in the form of things that may be quite insulting or rude or aggressive, it also can be a unifying force. I mean, maybe now, instead of what was seen as unifying just the white working class, maybe now they can unify all of the working class of all colors and races and things of that nature, religions. And I think a message of we're all just here against the system, against the Washington insider, against the New York capitalist, I think that could be a completely different message, but yet still fall within the Trump brand. You have to admit there would be something very Trump about, yeah, he's from New York, he's going to fight against them now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking that here, Donald Trump, who's the essence of the New York capitalists and who was president and ran the country, I mean, he's suddenly still seen as an outsider, as someone who's fighting. I mean, I find that it just shows, frankly, how marketing and messaging really can supersede everything, whether there's anything behind it or not, you know. But anyway, let's move on, because we've talked a lot about Trump. We've talked somewhat about the Republican Party, but oh my goodness, guys, what are the Democrats going to do? I mean, if you were advised, okay, Connor, you're the advisor to President Joseph Biden. And he's turned to you to say, Connor, what do we do now? What do you tell him, Connor?
First off, I'd say use his words really carefully because whenever he tends to go up there, he tends to trip over himself. But I think major talking points that Biden, if he does not give up his delegates at the convention, he should focus on Schedule F, which is a policy that around about 2 million federal employees will be subject to political hiring and firing, affecting everything from national park rangers to scientists at NOAA. Like, that's not healthy for a democracy. I would focus on that. I'd focus on Project 2025, which is like an 180-day playbook sort of deal that if Trump were to take office, it in essence deconstructs an administrative state, targeting anything from the DOJ, FBI, Homeland Security, Department of Education, just anything and everything. So I would target those things specifically, while also bringing to the fact that we can't forget what Trump has done as the first term. Like, we were all like fearful. What is Trump going to say in social media today? Oh no, what's going to happen? Right? We can't forget. Are we going to wake up every day? I mean, with Joe Biden, he might be walking with a walker every single day and might have the tennis balls underneath it, like the grandpa from Up. But like, we don't have to worry about Trump saying whatever, whenever. Now, this is hypothetically, this could all change based upon the assassination attempt. But
right.
In a world that we haven't experienced the next couple of months, right now, I would advise President Biden for these things. However, I also would note that I would also advise President Biden not to run in the first place.
Wow.
I think that President Biden is way beyond his age. I think he's very, 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 very productive in his career. I think he served the nation honorably. But for some people, right, 60 is old and other people 80 is young. Well, 81 is old for Biden. He doesn't say things that are quippy like, say, Reagan did when he was 75. I remember him talking about, when Reagan turned 75, he discussed that it's 24 degrees Celsius. Like, Biden doesn't have that same whip that somebody like a Reagan does, or somebody that Trump does.
And yet there's some evidence that Reagan may have had Alzheimer's when he was at the onset of it when he was in office. So, right.
Yeah. So I would advise Biden to, for the good of the country, if not the party, maybe move forward and don't run. But if he's bent on running, if he is absolutely going to run, this is, I think, the best path to go about this stuff. And I think that's what he has to do. But he has to really, really be careful, because every single time he goes up there on stage, Joe Biden's never been a public speaker. He tends to dig himself in a deeper hole. So he has to be careful on what he says and when he says it.
And to be honest, Connor and Mary, I'll bring you in. To be honest, a huge part of the job of a president is being able to speak to the American people and inspire them. That's huge. I mean, I know we say, well, we don't care if he flood, but if you can't inspire a nation, you can't unify a nation. You can't speak to the nation. Mary, what did Connor say you didn't like? You liked everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm agreeing with you that that's a very important part about being a president, speaking to the nation, inspiring them. And I personally think he's failing at that part of the job. And I agree with Connor that if I were to be his advisor, I would advise him to drop out. I mean, I personally don't think that he will drop out of the race, but who knows at this point? Who knows what will happen? There's still 1 month till the Democratic National Convention. But for me, I would feel some relief if he dropped out. Honestly, I would applaud him if he dropped out, because he knows that it's his time to step back. There might be someone better to come take his spot on the ticket. He needs to go out, live his life, enjoy his life, not be so stressed. But if he does drop out, I think his best bet would be for Kamala Harris to take his place, because she just has the largest national profile, I think, and would still have some credit for the incumbency on the ticket. And people know her. They know what she's like, which could either be a benefit or a fault. But yeah.
I hear what you're saying. Let me bring Sam. Sam, I can put it this way. Here's my concern. Is our nation really ready for a Black woman who also has Asian heritage to be president? Are we there yet? Can we accept that? Are we going from maybe Biden can win to she's no way she could win?
I think we are ready for the first African American female president to be Michelle Obama. We are not for the first African American female president to be Kamala Harris, though, because she has proven that her approval ratings somehow have been lower than Joe Biden's. And I don't think she would be, while I do agree on the notion of Joe Biden should drop out, that would be his best chance. I do not think Kamala Harris would be the best choice. I cannot comment to who would be the best choice, but I don't believe it would be her. If Michelle Obama were willing to run, she has shown in polls that she beats Trump, not just by 1% above margin of error. She beats by about 10% over a margin of error. And I think if you really want the one person who can win against a man who had his fist in the air, blood running down his face, and American flag behind him, she's the only person, I think, who would have that ability.
Well, that's a new one. Oh, okay, so Michelle, and yet people say she is just too smart to step into that kind of turmoil. But okay, I'm going to let you guys have your final say because we got to wrap it up, and I'm going to bring you back because I mean you've just got some ideas to share. Connor, you're chomping at the bit. What?
Well, just to add into this conversation that we're having here, I think that what it boils down to in this hypothetical universe, if Biden were to step aside, is, yeah, Harris brings a lot of money, but she's, as Sam said, very unpopular. Just look at the border, just doesn't have the approval ratings to really pull it off. She's just unpopular. She's cursed with being unpopular for whatever reason. However, if you're willing to throw aside the money issue between the Biden-Harris campaign, if you want people that are smooth talking, efficient when they speak, not stumbling over their words. I mean, I think Gavin Newsom's a good pick. There's Gretchen Whitmer out there. I mean, these people have to, wait for Biden to go away, but there's also like Wes Moore. Like there's lots of people, even Pennsylvania's governor, that could step forward theoretically if need be. But at the same token, this is all hypothetical. And are you willing to really let go of the money issue and put somebody up that from outside of the pack that is bridge caps, great public orator, and has experience in the executive government of states? I think that's the real question in the conversation.
The caveat I have to throw into all of this is, unfortunately, not yet tested and tried against Donald Trump. And that's the one thing Biden says. I've gone up against him. I beat him. I'll beat him again. So, okay, that's what he says. We will see. We're going to have to stop this conversation here. There's so much more we could talk about, but I want to thank you, Mary. I want to thank you, Sam and Connor. Please stay tuned. We will have you back here on Battleground PA very soon. Goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye.